Okay, we're continuing in Sefer Shoftim. We're on Perek Yud Aleph now. The Jewish people have gone to the lowest depths of sin against Hashem. They are under constant pressure from Bnei Ammon. For 18 years on the East Bank, Bnei Ammon wanted to go into the West Bank as well. And then the Jewish people really got alarmed, and they finally did a sort of a proper tshuva, and Ammon retreated back to the east side of the Jordan River. And according to some opinions, as a matter of fact, they even went back to Ammon. But it seems, according to simple pshat, is that Bnei Ammon were staying in Gilad, and the Jewish people were in Mitzpah, and there appears to be an imminent battle coming. The people saying to themselves, we need someone to lead us into battle. So in Pasuk Aleph, we now get sort of background to another story that will mesh in with this story now. So in Pasuk Aleph, we're introduced to Yiftach. The Yiftach HaGiladi Hayo Gibor Chayil. Yiftach, who was from Gilad, so he was from this region of the world, from Eretz Yisrael, from the East Bank. He was a Gibor Chayil. He was a great warrior, strong man. Who ben Isha Zoina, and he was the son of a woman who was a Zona. Vayoled Gilad es Yiftach, and Yiftach gave birth, fathered Yiftach. Gilad fathered Yiftach. So what information do we know? That the father of Yiftach, his name was Gilad, which is also interesting because the whole area was called Gilad. Okay, number one. And he was the son of a woman who was a Zona. So there's different commentaries exactly what happened. And so the simple commentary is she was a Zona. She was a prostitute. The Targum Yonasan says she was an Itza Pundokisa. She was an innkeeper. And the last innkeeper we were referred to in the Navi was Rachav in Sefer Yoshua. And the understanding was that yes, part of the work of an innkeeper is she took care of all your needs beyond the lodgings. So that would fit in with that. The Radak and the Malbim say that she was a Pilegesh, she was a concubine. And the Ralbag says a most interesting commentary is that the woman that he married, there wasn't anything wrong technically, but she was from another Shevet. And you know, Zona comes from Zonim, to stray. So he strayed into another Shevet and married a woman from another Shevet. And that was something that was not commonly done because it could create certain problems within the Shevet. It could come time in terms of inheritance or things like that. So since it was most uncommon, they you want to keep within your own kind, as it were. So therefore, she's called a Zona in that area. So we've given you from the worst possible interpretation to the best possible interpretation. Be that as it may, there was some type of taint in his lineage from his mother's side. According to all the interpretations, there's something wrong from the mother's side, which will help us to understand the next couple psukim. Now, so it appears this was either his first wife, but then he had another wife, this guy Gilad. So in Pasuk Beis, Vateled Eshes Gilad Lo Banim, the wife of Gilad now gave birth to Gilad sons, other sons. Vayegadlu b'nei ha'isha, and the sons of that wife grew up. Vayegorshu es Yiftach, and they drove Yiftach away from the family homestead. Vayomru lo, and they said to him, Lo simcha b'veis avinu, you will not inherit in the house of our father, ki ben isha acheres ata, because you're the son of a different woman. Okay, so So we see that it was like this. Gilad had two wives. He had one wife who was, again, according to the Malbim, he had one wife was a concubine and one wife was a proper wife. Or whatever the interpretations you want for this first wife, or from a different shevet. So the sons, they did, the Malbim explains, they did something that was not halachically correct. Especially according to the Rambam, according to the Malbim, he's saying he was, because a son of a Pilegesh still inherits the Nachala with the other sons. So he's just as acceptable. He may not have the greatest pedigree, but he's still inheritance comes fathered from two sons. And therefore, that which they chased away Yiftach was, he says, it was Chamos. It was, totally not proper what they did. So that's what they did. So they said, you aren't going to inherit. So Pasuk Gimel. So it seems that it got to the point where his life was physically in danger. The Malbim says that they were prepared to kill him. So what happened is in Pasuk Gimel, Vayivrav Yiftach mipnei achav. So Yiftach has to run away from his brothers. Vayeshev be'eretz Tov, and he lived in the land of Tov. So again, two interpretations by the Radak. Either it was a city called Tov, or it was a city or a place, as the Targum says, it was owned by a person named Tov. And we have in the book of Ruth, when Boaz went to the closer relative, to the descendants who had died, and he offered him the option of Yibum first, his name was Tov. So you see, there is the name of people to be called Tov, although they weren't so Tov. But he went to a person named Tov, so you could say he went to fell by the name of Tov. Either way, I mean, it's interesting the contrast. He went to a place that would be better than the place he was at. Of all the names to pick, could be every kind of benign name, and we picked the name Tov because obviously being there for him is more Tov than where he was at home. That's right. So, and therefore, so he really wasn't. He was forced out of his home, and while he was there, Vayislaktu el Yiftach anoshim reikim. So they gathered around Yiftach people who were empty. Obviously the guy runs away from home. He's not in his homestead. He's not with his family. He's a stranger wherever he's at. He's a strong fellow. So he collects all kinds of chevra, empty, motorcycle gang people, raking empty people. Vayetzu imo, and they went with him where he went. So. We'll have to see exactly what this means and what implications this will have for us. Now, before we go further, I want to just share with you something from the Reb Tzadok in his Sefer Machshavos Charutz. And if anybody wants to research it, it's on Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. So he mentioned something interesting, but we need to, as we go along, hopefully expand on what he's saying over here. But to give you some idea of who we're dealing with. So, of course, we know there's a famous psukim in the Torah, in Sefer Dvarim. It says that when you have to decide what to do as a people, you will go to the Kohanim and the Levim and to the Shofet and to the judge. Asher yiyah bayomim hahem, which will be in these days, in your days. So the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, as if to say you would be going to a judge who is not in your days. Of course you go to the judge in your days. What's the Torah saying in your days? So Gemara answers, he says, the answer is you can only go to the Shofet who is in your generations. In other words, you have to go to the leader who is in your generation. And a little bit before that, the Gemara says, so Yiftach bedoro, Kishmuel bedoro. Yiftach in his generation as the leader is like Shmuel in his generation as the leader. Meaning to say, these are like the polaric extremes. Shmuel was probably the best leader the Jewish people ever had. He went around, first of all, he was a tzaddik, 100% tzaddik. He was dedicated totally to Hashem. And he ran around all the time to different cities to reach out to people. So that was like the best leader they ever had. Yiftach, on the other hand, was like one of the lowest. All he seems at this point, all we know is he's strong. That's about it. We're not blaming him. I guess his mother was a zona of one form or another, and he gets thrown out by his brothers. That's not exactly and let's add, by the way, the Malbim says, we got thrown out. Where were the elders of the city in Gilad to stop such a terrible travesty of justice? Nobody had anything to say.
Sure.
So obviously Yiftach's youth was damaged. So whatever. But he as we will see. We'll read more about him. He is not one of the best shoftim, to put it mildly. So people will say, well, why should I respect the shofet? Why should I go to the shofet? Look who he is. Look who he is. They're nobody. If we would have had Shmuel, then that's someone to respect. So we're told the leader you have is the leader you have, and you have to go to him regardless. This is what you have. So it's interesting. So what does that mean? So Reb Tzadok explains it homiletically. He says, let me just read a few lines. He says, now let's look at his name and try to understand what his name is. His name is Yiftach. What does Yiftach mean? It means he will open. Pesach. Pesach is an opening. It's not stam a name. So Yiftach, he will open. So he says like this, Mi shepeseach shar chodosh ba'avodas Hashem yisbarach b'doro. It's a reference to someone who opens up a new gateway in service to Hashem in his generation. That's what the Gemara on the more mystical level is trying to explain. That a Yiftach B'doro, one who creates new ways of serving Hashem. So hu hamanik ha'amiti k'Shmuel B'doro. He is the true leader like Shmuel in his generation. So that's that. In other words, well, we were always used to serving Hashem this way, and now all of a sudden, this is a new way. Now, of course, we don't mean new in terms of changing the religion, but we mean taking on a new approach. As he'll explain a little bit why that is. So he's saying, in every generation, there is, hischatshus upsichaso. There's always new events happening. And really every generation has to open up new territory, as it were, through the leader who's there. Because there's new challenges. So obviously, even if you look at it at a simple level, this is the whole gateway to Hasidus. The Baal Shem Tov starts a whole, brings back, right? Baal Shem Tov saw their generation, what was going on. The Jews were broken, they were down-spirited. The oppressions in Europe were incredible. Yidden didn't have simcha in their avodas Hashem. So what is Baal Shem Tov comes along, and he is a yiftach, as it were. He opens up in his generation a new way. Now it's not totally new, but for years there wasn't a focus as much as there perhaps should have been on simcha in your avodas Hashem. People were more focused on, okay, we've got to be scholarly, serious. And what was happening is there was a tremendous amount of Jews who were disconnected. The non-scholarly felt very much not inspired by the Yiddishkeit. If you weren't a scholar, you were finished. So now, it was a time that needed some new direction. Now, we're not saying a brand new religion at all. But the Torah does say many times the reason we went through so much suffering in the Golus is we didn't serve Hashem with simcha. So the focus was lost. So the Baal Shem Tov now takes it to the other extreme, and mamish focuses simcha and avodas Hashem and all the other trappings that Hasidus had. So now why did he do that? Because there was a certain lapse in the generation. And so therefore he starts a new focus. And of course, this was met with a lot of resistance. So, what are you guys doing over here? Where's the Torah scholarship? Where's this? Where's that? So, and many people felt the Hasidus was threatening Yiddishkeit. So, but what it meant? But there was a new need. There was a new need to emphasize, and we'll see as he explains a little more this idea. So, there's got to be a bit of expansion. You expand a new doorway to accommodate those things that are out of the main. That's the idea.
That's dangerous.
It's not dangerous.
That's what we're saying today. Why can't we do that?
It has to stay within Judaism's parameters.
Yeah, the Reform thing, they're within.
They're not.
Of course they are not. But
they're rejecting. There's nothing in Hasidus that ever went against what it says in the Torah. Never. They just didn't do things the way people were used to things being done. Let me give you a different example. Sorah Schneer, Jewish women never had a formal Jewish education in school. Never. It was never part of what Judaism was. Right? But now you're coming in the 1900s, and the ghetto walls are coming down, and all the Jewish girls are tempted to go to universities where they're going to learn kfira and heresy against Torah.
Right.
And so now something had to happen to head that off. It was a new era now. You're taking up people who for hundreds of years were in ghettos, and now the ghetto walls are opening up, and there's a tremendous Yetzer Hara of this freedom. So you sit back and do nothing. You're watching girls falling away left and right. So then they did something that was considered so radical. They opened up Beis Yaakovs. They opened up schools, formal schools for Jewish girls to learn Torah.
She first went to get a hesed from the Gadol.
And she went to great rabbis to get their approval. Right? So if you look at it in terms of tradition, it was totally radical. But what were they doing? Learn Torah in a formal setting. Okay, that was something that never happened before in Yiddishkeit. But is anywhere against the Torah that says you can't do that? Right? But again, can you imagine? It's hard for you to understand this because we've already been teaching girls for the last 90, 100 years. See, that's normal. It wasn't normal 100 years ago. A Jewish woman belongs totally in the house. Finished. That's the way it is. If a Jewish woman should go out of the house and be educated like boys are educated out of the house, what are you talking about? So, I mean, you got to be careful how far you take it. You see, there's some people who suggest we should even teach girls Gemara. Now that the Gemara tells you shouldn't do that. Okay, that's where you're taking a step a little bit too far, right? But if you're staying within the parameters of Torah and Chazal, it's okay. But it was a new dimension that was necessary to open up, right? So of course it has to be done with approval of the tradition that's there. But the Reform and Conservative, they're saying no, this in the Torah just doesn't apply anymore. That's not staying within the bounds. That's leaving Judaism. But if you need to expand the scope to be more inclusive without overstepping your bounds, that is the concept of Yiftach. That's the concept that he's bringing.
But the girls getting an aliyah.
That's beyond the bounds. There's aspects
is it written anywhere in the Torah?
Yes, it's very clearly understood that they're not to take public roles in institutions where men are obliged to be in. Right? There's aspects of tznius. You have to have a mechitza.
Right.
So how can you have a mechitza if women?
How can you study Torah and not have an aliyah? I mean, that's.
What do you mean? Torah is one thing and aliyah is another thing.
I studied Torah my whole life. I never.
What do you have to aliyah? Aliyah means you have to publicly go up to.
What's the problem? I think.
So that's not. We're getting a little bit off topic here. We're getting off topic here.
Fine.
But the idea of
you said that each time there should be a new way of doing things.
It has to be. It has to be done with consultation of great rabbis who know the tradition and know what is not violating what's within the realm of Torah and what is violating. And some things that you'd think isn't a problem is a problem, right? And when you start, so you need the guidance of the rabbis to know what is beyond and what is not beyond. So you have to always be careful and you have to be very judicious when you make these decisions. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the Talmud says that you cannot write down the oral law. It's forbidden to write down the oral law. The only thing that's allowed to be written is the Tanakh. That's it. Nothing else can be written. That's what the rabbis and the Gemaras, they extract from the text of the Torah, that you cannot write down the oral law. Right? So comes Yehuda Hanassi 1,800 years ago, and he makes a decision that he's going to start writing down the Mishnayos. It's against the Torah. So again, he understood with the other great rabbis' generation that because of the tremendous oppression of the Romans against the Jews, that we didn't have the peace of mind anymore to be able to learn Torah the way it was. He says, if we don't write this down, Torah will be forgotten.
That's a radical thing.
Yeah, but let's look at the options. Torah will be forgotten. There'll be no Torah anymore. And without Torah, we're not a people. Without Torah, we're dead. We can't function as a people without Torah. So we say, well, sorry, we can't write it down. So what will happen is, in another 2 generations, there will be no more Torah, and there'll be no more Yiddishkeit. So there's a time where you have to, as it would appear, to nullify a part of Torah, only to enhance the Torah. You have to remember, all these things, what they really are enhancements in order to avoid tremendous destruction of what is inherently what Jews have to be all about.
So that's a slippery slope.
I'm not saying it's not, but you have to.
But there was a Sanhedrin.
Right. So you go to the Jewish leadership, the understood leadership, not self-made mavericks who do not have any acceptance within the traditional religion.
But that's clearly violating something that was...
It's not, but God says also in the Torah, the Navi says, it says, Eis lasos Lashem. God says as well, there's a time to act for Hashem, lo haferes Torasecha, to nullify one part of Torah, to make another part more important, more accessible. This is the whole reason for rabbinic laws. Can you blow a shofar on Shabbos? No.
So you really can't.
The rabbi said you can't.
But originally.
But what do you mean? The Torah says you can.
Yeah.
What are they coming along and saying you can't? No. Oh, so that's really the same thing.
This is the opposite.
No. Because what are you talking about? The Torah says blow the shofar on Shabbos. Torah says blow the shofar on Shabbos. The rabbi said we're not. What are you doing? Because they understood that the people were now have denigrated the Shabbos to the point they don't respect Shabbos anymore. And without Shabbos, there's no Jewish people. So guess what? We have to take steps to ensure that Shabbos is still Shabbos. So every leniency or every radical movement was always made to strengthen things. That's an important thing. And it was never meant to change the Torah. We will hope the day will come that we will once again blow the shofar on Shabbos, when Shabbos will be back to the level it deserves. But until it reaches that time, we have to do things to ensure that Shabbos remains Shabbos. Now, it's far cry from saying, as the Reform say, since people live in suburbia, we will allow them to drive on Shabbos. Because you can't do that, because that is a violation of the Shabbos. This is tearing down the Shabbos. What they did was not to increase the beauty of Shabbos. They're violating hundreds of laws of Shabbos for what? For something that is not necessary. You just tell the people, live close to the shul. That's all. Live close to they should say, all people have to live.
Set up. Hashem set up a system.
I understand that.
So you're right. It's a slip, and God has confidence. That's the whole aspect. The whole oral law is based on that. God says, this is the way I'm giving you to understand. My Torah is a living document. It's a fluid document. It's a Torah's Chaim. You have to make adjustments within the parameters of Torah. And I've given you clear parameters. The rabbinic rights have been codified. This is how far you can go when necessary, and that's within the basis of Torah. But you have to be loyal to that, and don't allow, external views to be the reason why you're making these decisions. The problem with the Reform and Conservative is they were based on one thing only. We believe in a new philosophy that is not Torah, which is be like the non-Jew. And everything now is going to conform to that new philosophy. Their philosophy said, in your home be a Jew, out of the home don't be a Jew. That is a philosophy that's against the corpus of what Yiddishkeit is all about. Once they made that, now they in honor of that brand new mitzvah, they went and destroyed the entire Torah. So they say, go play an organ on Shabbos in the shul. Why did they want to do that? Only for one reason. Because the Goyim played an organ on Sunday. But the Torah says you can't play an organ. The rabbis say you can't play an organ ever on Shabbos. Well, it'll make the service look more like a Goyish service. And then when they say we're going to change the Shabbos service to Sunday, where can you do that from? They used to have service on Sundays.
They did it originally.
I'm just saying. But God says, I have confidence in the genuine Jews who will understand how to make these tikkunim when necessary. When necessary, they will make this. And the Torah was always designed that it should happen. God told them, is this something you have to know when to add a stringency, when to make a leniency. It's fluid. It's no different than what I would call marriage counseling. No one would suggest that in every marriage, every day, you should go on a vacation. No one would suggest that. That would be a very harmful marriage. But let's say a marriage counselor sees, the relationship with the husband and wife is really getting bad. And the big reason is they don't communicate anymore. They don't see each other anymore. And that's the problem. So he says, I think you have to go away for 2 weeks to go back to communicate with each other. That's crazy. Nobody lives that way. If you guys don't get away for 2 weeks, you're going to get divorced. But we're always going to be on vacation? You can't live without being on vacation. I said, for the next 2 weeks, we're on vacation. I would suggest every week, once a week, you go out and talk to each other. Well, these are the modifications that have to be made. If you don't, you'll get divorced. But now, if you were better, you wouldn't need to do that. But, since you have big communication problems, this is what I suggest you have to do. Okay? That's what you have to do. So God realized there's ups and downs, and we have to know when to plug in. Now, if the Jews always held Shabbos in the highest esteems, the rabbis wouldn't have to say that you can't blow the shofar on Shabbos. But if they had to do it, say, Shabbos must be very important. We've got to treat Shabbos much better now. So they understood these are things you have to do. Now, if Rabbi Yudina said, if we don't write down this Torah, it will be lost. Now, we know one thing. Without the Torah, the Jewish people are not a Jewish people. That's all there is to it. So we're going to have to make a painful concession. Why? Because we will have no Yiddishkeit afterwards. But you have to know, the point is, because we want to keep the relationship good. The Reform and Conservative, they were minimalists. They didn't care about the relationship anymore. They wanted Judaism to look exactly like Christianity with a Jewish flavor. So they were departing from the essentials of Yiddishkeit to make Yiddishkeit look like another religion. That's a totally different framework. Right? It's not loyal to the tenets of Yiddishkeit. Now, the people making these decisions did not believe in God anymore. Did not believe in Torah from Sinai. So, and now they're making decisions based on, we have a new view of what Judaism should be. We should be like Goyim who have Jewish traditions. That's what they really felt. So that's against Yiddishkeit totally. So you need great people to smell out the falseness of these things. They start very subtle. They say, we'll just take this prayer out. But it's meant to take away from the Yiddishkeit. Well, then that's totally wrong. You're right, it's a slope, and therefore you have to go to the establishment who has the traditions and understands where the spirit of Torah is, and you have to keep that spirit of Torah in line. So all new changes are always looked at skeptically, and has to pass a very strict regimen of criticism to make sure that it is staying loyal to it. And there are times people wanted to do things, and Rabbi said, your intentions are good, but it's going to cause problems later on, and we shouldn't do such a thing. So that's...
I know, I agree with what Rabbi saying. I just think someone from one of those movements would probably say, if we didn't do this, we'd lose these people anyways, and they'd all...
No, but they were wrong.
...be gone.
But they're wrong.
And we'd have no Yiddishkeit anyway.
But they're wrong.
That's their philosophy.
Right.
And that's what,
so fine. But the people who made these things up were not Torah scholars and couldn't care less about Yiddishkeit.
No, but if they look at the number of people who are observant, declining, they're saying, at least we're doing this so we have Jews around. I think that's the logic.
Okay, so now this was not done in consultation with the traditional leadership.
Obviously.
So, and you see where it's taken them. It's taken them to oblivion. And so how is it that you're allowed to marry a non-Jew without proper conversion?
Who would have imagined?
Right? What happened? Patrilineal descent is out the window. You don't have to eat kosher. What's going on? So you see, it was minimalistic. So so that's the issue. So yeah.
You're not going that far anyway in this.
Well, Right, but I'm saying, but there's something, we'll have to see what's the radical departure to keep what's going on.
He didn't consult any Rabbunim.
Well, first of all, we haven't discussed anything. We haven't discussed Yiftach yet. We have nothing to say.
Well, that's what
But I'm trying to help us appreciate who this Yiftach is over here.
All right.
That's all I'm saying. The Tzaddik doesn't go into detail with Yiftach. He's just using this one line and saying what has to happen. And he says, and in every generation, he says, there's two types of leaders. The example of the Mashiach ben David leader, and the example of the Mashiach ben Yosef leader, which there's difference. And he says, especially in the Ikvas of the Mashiach, in the times before the Mashiach, which is really the Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef, relates to two types of people. One is the Baal Tshuva, and one is the Tzaddik Gomer. One is a complete Tzaddik. And they open up for us two different gates in every generation. There's the gate that the Baal Tshuva gate opens up, and there's a gate that the Tzaddik Gomer opens up. So, and he says that the way of Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef, is the Tzaddik Gomer way. Because Yosef is the Tzaddik, he's straight and narrow path, never deviates. When there's opportunities to sin, he holds himself tight. Yosef never really sinned in the Torah. Okay, he didn't understand how to deal with the brothers, but we wouldn't call that an Avera per se. Okay? So he's always, as they call it, on the Kav HaYashor, on the straight path, never going off the path. So, and therefore everyone can walk on the right path, and there shouldn't be any deviations. But on the other hand, the Mashiach ben David represents the Baal Tshuva. He says, Masha Enken Keshachata, when he sins and then goes off the straight path. In other words, you got a straight line. Straight line always stays straight. But then what if you go off the line? Right? So now, how are we going to get that person back in line? So what you have to do is, it's not so easy to get the line to come back. What you have to do is you have to expand the road. If a guy goes off the road like this, sometimes you gotta keep the road, not to make a new road. Here's the difference. Guys off the road, you can't get him back on the road. You just can't. He's far away. So you have two options now. Well, let's just make a brand new road.
Follow him.
Right? Or let's just make our road bigger. And it'll become more inclusive, but it stays on our road. Do you understand? So when Jews are not accepting, are falling off in Shabbos, there's sins in Shabbos now. So what do we say? Okay, sins in Shabbos, let's make a brand new road to accommodate the non-Shabbos observers. We will not make a new road. You can drive on Shabbos. That's a brand new road. You can't do that. But we'll say, listen, invite people to your home on Shabbos. Invite a secular person. What are you talking about? They're not dressed sneistic. They're not respectful to this. How could you just let them burn in hell? No, we have to expand our road. We have to go over to them and say, how are you? We love you. The guy's a heretic. How could you talk to him? I have to bring him to see the beauty of Shabbos. I'll expand my road. If I make the road bigger, we can keep the guy to be in our pathway, in our road. You see. So what happens is that is the shar that you open up. You expand, but you're keeping the road. That's what it's such a terrible print over here. He says, Harei nisrachev gvulo kemidas ikomakav. So the boundary of the road has to be expanded to the degree of how crooked the line was made. Shekol kav hamisakim. Whenever a line gets crooked, it spreads out more to the side that it went crooked. When you want to make it straight, what do you have to do? You have to expand the line to the degree that the thing went over the side. But you're still keeping the road. You're just expanding the road as opposed to making a brand new road.
Essentially going the same direction.
Right? And then you can come back, Leos, on the Kav HaYashor, which is now a more expanded road. That's all. It's more expansive, more inclusive, but not a brand new road.
When was this written?
About 1900. About 1900. So he says, so then it comes out, the mala of the Baal Tshuva is over the Tzaddik Gomor because the Baal Tshuva has created a wider road. The Tzaddik says, this is all we can go, we can't go anymore. I can't go out of my house, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do that. This is the Tzaddik way, which is fine. If you're a Tzaddik, that's fine. The Baal Tshuva now has a wider road. There's been road improvements. You see, you go on the highways, they expanded from 6 lanes to 8 lanes. Right? Because we have to include even, let's say, I'll make a slow lane. Let's say there's slower learners. So we have to have another lane to include. What do you do if certain people are having learning difficulties? Well, too bad, they're ignorant. There's nothing we can do about them. What are you talking about? We have to expand the lane. We have to make a stream now that accommodates the slower. It's going to cost us millions of dollars more. It's going to have to cost us millions of dollars more. That's all. And that means we have to give more tzedakah. Because we have to give more tzedakah. You have to expand the line. So we'll have to see. And the last point he says, and that is really the pshat of Yaakov, who was given nachala below Meitzarim. We see that Yaakov was given an inheritance that was without boundaries. Why? Because Yaakov has to include everyone, all the Baal Tshuvas. When you have Baal Tshuvas, you're expanding your boundaries to accommodate, to bring them back into the fold. And he says that is the shorish of Knesset Yisrael, which is called Yehuda. And that's really what Yehuda is all about. That has the koach to make a tikkun and to fix things up. So obviously, Yiftach with this name must mean there's going to be some type of new aspect of Yiddishkeit that he's bringing. So at this point, we might suggest that he is doing some kind of kiruv over here. Because who is his chevra? All these empty people. So it could be, he's the first kiruv professional over here, that he's trying to take empty people and uplift them and maybe keep them on the path of Yiddishkeit. We'll have to read more into the story to see what other openings that Yiftach provides us with. Okay, continue this tomorrow, Mir Hashem.